When a quiet force steps into a studio famous for turning soft voices into roaring headlines, the air changes instantly. The live crowd slips into their seats, the spotlights narrow like 1,000 sharp eyes, and the atmosphere thickens with a pulse you can almost feel vibrating under your skin. Luke Bryan strides onto the set with his usual relaxed confidence, yet today, there's a weight around him that makes every camera operator lean in a little closer. At the table, Joy Bahar sits waiting, her smile practiced and probing, the kind of smile that hints she's already 3 moves ahead. And just like that, something shifts. A spark. A warning. A hint that this isn't going to be another routine interview. As Luke settles into his chair, the room seems to pause mid-breath. Conversations die out. The low hum of the stage machinery softens. Even the audience's restless rustling slows as if everyone senses a collision forming right in front of them. A subtle wave of anticipation rolls through the studio, slow at first, then stronger, like a swell gathering strength before crashing onto shore. Joy's eyes sharpen with a playful but unmistakable challenge. Luke's jaw flexes, the steady look of a man who walked in knowing this could turn into a battlefield. Then it happens. The first question drops, lightly spoken, but with an edge sharp enough to slice the room clean open. Luke hears it. He takes a moment, letting the silence stretch until every heartbeat in the studio syncs with the tension hanging in the air. Something flickers in his expression, something the audience can feel but can't quite identify. A subtle shift that sends a collective chill down the spine of the room. A producer behind the camera inhales too fast. A stagehand freezes mid-step. No one knows what Luke is about to say next, but everyone can feel the fuse igniting. Because this moment isn't rehearsed. It isn't controlled. This is the spark before the explosion, the tiny crack that will soon erupt into a Hollywood shockwave. But the storm didn't start on the stage. It began in the back rooms, before the audience filed in, before the lights snapped awake. Before anyone realized they were about to watch a moment that would shake the foundations of daytime TV. Backstage, the tension hums like electricity building before a thunderstorm. Luke Bryan arrives earlier than expected, stepping into the dim corridor with a half-smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. His boots hit the polished floor with steady purpose, each step calm but loaded. Beneath that southern ease, something simmers, a mix of caution, curiosity, and the focused steadiness of someone who knows a simple conversation can become a battlefield with no warning. He adjusts his jacket, exhales slowly, and lets the distant chatter of the crew wash over him. He's done this 1,000 times, crowds, cameras, tough interviews, but today feels different. A subtle warning hums in the air. The other side of the building faces yet another storm. Joy Bahar sits in her dressing room, her door cracked just enough for the hallway light to spill in. The glow from her vanity lights reflects off a face seasoned by experience and sharpened by intention. She flips through her cards with a precise rhythm, pausing each time she reaches the question, the one wrapped in controversy, the one she knows could ignite the entire room. She taps the card lightly against the table, a quiet drumbeat of anticipation. She isn't anxious. She's calculating. And she knows viewers expect her trademark sting. Still, even she senses something different weaving through the air, something she chooses to ignore. Meanwhile, in the control room, producers whisper urgently, their eyes flicking between monitors as if searching for comfort that refuses to appear. They know Joy's style. They know Luke's straightforward reputation. And they know this combination can turn chaotic fast. One producer drags a hand through his hair and exhales sharply, another bites her lip while glancing at the clock, as if it's counting down to something none of them can stop. They don't interfere. Not now. Not when tensions are this volatile. Not when the slightest warning could trigger the explosion they're trying to avoid. And just inches beyond the curtain, the audience remains blissfully unaware of the storm brewing behind the scenes. They chat, laugh, take selfies, and settle into their seats with excitement. They have no idea why the producers look tense. They don't notice the stage manager pacing faster than usual. They don't sense the electric charge floating through the air, one that signals a confrontation sharp enough to slice straight through daytime television. Luke waits near the stage entrance, rolling his shoulders, shaking off what little hesitation remains. His gaze follows Joy's silhouette as she steps out of her dressing room, wrapped in polished calm. Their eyes lock for 1 second, just one. But in that sliver of time, something unspoken crackles between them. Something charged. Something impossible to ignore, something electric flickers in the air, volatile, warning, the kind of energy that suggests a boundary is seconds away from being crossed. The stage manager announces they're going live, his voice tighter than usual. Luke gives a slight nod. Joy's smile widens. The crew stiffens. The audience erupts with cheers. Nobody in the room realizes they're standing on the fault line of a moment that's about to detonate across Hollywood. But the storm feels it. It's already breathing, already spreading through the beams and wires of the studio, waiting for its cue to break. The conversation begins with an unexpected gentleness, like the glassy surface of a lake hiding a churning undercurrent. Warm studio lights bathe the set in a soft, golden glow. The audience leans forward with relaxed, eager grins. They don't sense the tremor rippling beneath the floorboards. Luke Bryan settles back in his chair with his usual southern charm, flashing a polite grin that sparks a wave of applause. Joy welcomes him with a voice dipped in honey, smooth enough to soothe but sharp enough to slice if she angles it correctly. For a fleeting moment, the interaction feels harmless, like two people exchanging pleasantries at a quiet cafe rather than under the unforgiving eye of live television. Then Joy turns over her first card. And the world shifts. Her fingers hesitate, just for half a heartbeat. Most of the audience doesn't notice. Luke does. His eyes follow the motion with slow, deliberate accuracy, the trained awareness of someone who has learned to read a room before he ever speaks. Joy's smile stretches wider, but something behind it turns colder. She leans in, poised, breath steady, and releases the first question with a softness so calculated it feels dangerous. The moment her words drift into the air, the atmosphere tightens, not loudly, but abruptly, like a chill sliding down the spine. Luke catches the shift instantly. The audience feels it too, though they can't name it. Behind the cameras, the crew sits up straighter, shoulders tightening as if bracing for an impact they can't yet see. Luke lets the question rest between them for a beat. Then another. His silence adds weight to the room, intentional, steady, controlled. His jaw flickers, a small movement, tightening then easing. A subtle signal only the closest observers might catch. His eyes sharpen with a measured calm, as though he's gauging the exact depth of what Joy just dropped into his lap. He responds politely. His voice steady, low, smooth, filling the room without forcing itself. But beneath the courtesy lies something firmer, a quiet line drawn in sand, a warning disguised as composure. Joy tilts her head. She watches everything, his tone, his posture, the faint ember behind his eyes. Her smile stretches just a bit too far, revealing that she recognizes the shift. He senses it too. The entire room feels it. Tension begins to ripple outward, still soft, still hidden inside polite laughter, but pulsing with something that could ignite if touched the wrong way. Luke shifts slightly, grounding himself with the instinct of someone who has survived countless spotlights and unpredictable crowds. His hands rest calmly in his lap, but his fingers curl inward the slightest amount, a flicker of resolve tightening inside him. Joy transitions into her next point with deliberate precision. Her tone dances between humor and challenge, circling his previous answer with practiced control. She nudges just enough to thicken the air again. The audience chuckles, unaware they're inching closer to a flame that's beginning to burn hotter. Luke observes her, expression steady, but his eyes glint with something new, brief, sharp, unmistakable, like the first spark kissing dry kindling. He leans in, answering with slightly more weight, his voice still controlled but carrying a depth that suggests he clearly sees where this conversation is headed. He doesn't dodge. He doesn't retreat. He meets her straight on. And that very moment shifts the room. 1 degree only. Just enough for each to feel it getting hotter. A producer behind the camera sucks in a quick breath. A stagehand freezes mid-movement at the edge of the set. Joy's smile twitches, brief, almost imperceptible, but enough to show she felt the spark too. Luke holds her gaze, letting the silence stretch a second longer than necessary. It rolls through the room like a slow, thunderous drumbeat. The conversation recommences with a deceptive softness, as though trying to lull the room back into false safety. Luke leans back with an easy grin, earning another wave of applause. The lights remain warm, steady, inviting. For a fraction of time, it feels like everything might settle into a smooth rhythm. This illusion consists of 5 seconds. Joy's fingers drift across her next card. She glances down. And the energy in the room shifts again, sharp, undeniable, electric. Luke notices instantly. His eyes track her movement with a precision that borders on instinct, the way a man studies the first ripple on a still lake before the storm cracks open. Joy lifts her gaze, smile bright, but with a new, sharpened edge, and drops her next question. The tone is airy, playful, harmless on the surface, but the weight hidden inside it hits the table like a stone breaking the surface of water, sending a subtle shockwave through the studio. The audience laughs softly, unaware of the tension that just tightened the room. Luke immediately feels it. A quiet pressure presses along his spine, not enough to overwhelm, but enough to sharpen his attention. He exhales through his nose, barely a breath, then straightens just slightly in his seat. His smile stays warm, perfectly polite. But his eyes? His eyes harden with a steady, unmistakable readiness. A watchfulness settles over Luke, a quiet readiness that sharpens the moment like a blade. He answers with measured precision, every word delivered calmly, firmly, as though placed exactly where he intends it. He doesn't dodge, doesn't waver, doesn't show even a flicker of uncertainty. His clarity pulls the audience forward without them realizing why they're leaning in. Joy studies him with a softness that lasts only a breath before her gaze narrows again, the glint of calculation sliding back into place. Luke's fingers rest against his knee, tapping once, barely noticeable. A physical echo of the tightening coil gathering inside him. Joy leans closer, her elbows inching toward the table, posture shifting, more alert, more intent, more ready to press. The room senses the shift even before a single word is spoken. Laughter fades. The low hum of backstage machinery disappears into silence. A thick stillness drapes itself across the set like a curtain lowering in slow motion. Joy speaks again, her tone just a shade sharper. She loops back to his previous answer with a sly twist, testing him, nudging him toward a corner that's wide enough to feel safe but narrow enough to trap the unprepared. Luke tilts his head, eyes narrowing with a quiet spark, a controlled burn, not anger but awakening. He recognizes the shift in terrain. He leans forward slightly, his confidence slow and steady, and responds with a line so clean, so precise, it slices straight through the air. The audience reacts immediately, a ripple of laughter mixed with surprise. Joy blinks once, a tiny flicker, then forces her smile back into place, though it's tighter now, less natural. Behind the cameras, a producer stiffens. Another freezes mid-adjustment, hand suspended above a monitor. Luke sees all of it, the tension thickening, the energy shifting, the invisible buzz threading through the studio like static looking for a spark. Joy lifts her next cue card. Luke's fingers curl lightly. The silence stretches, dense, expectant. And in that brief, suspended breath, the entire studio feels the truth settle over them like distant thunder rolling across a sky. This is only just the beginning. Joy wastes no time. As soon as the audience quiets, she leans forward with a glint in her eyes that makes the crew behind the cameras shift uncomfortably. Her fingers tighten on the card. And then she releases a question, sharper, heavier, engineered with the precision of someone who knows exactly where to strike. The tone remains playful, but the words cut cleanly, like a blade wrapped in velvet. Luke hears the change before the question even finishes. His posture straightens. His jaw tightens. Instinct, pure instinct, fires through him. The warmth in his expression cools into something calmer, more anchored, more immovable. Tension drops between them like a weight placed squarely on the table. Neither of them budges. He answers without flinching. No stumble. No pause. His voice stays low and controlled, smooth enough to sound polite but firm enough to reveal the steel beneath. Every word lands with clear intention, civil on the surface, unshakable underneath. Joy listens, smile thinning into something unreadable. She doesn't retreat. She circles back, pushing again from another angle, pressing with more force this time. The energy flickers dangerously around them. The studio lights feel warmer. The audience shifts, but nobody makes a sound. Breath becomes a rare commodity. Luke raises his chin. His eyes sharpen, not in anger, but in focus. He's not letting her steer him into a trap. Not today. His next reply comes sharper. Not rude. Not raised. But firm, undeniably, unmistakably firm. A boundary drawn with such subtlety and power that the audience gasps before they can stop themselves. The conversation is no longer a conversation anymore. It's a duel wrapped in civility. Joy fires another question. Luke counters smoothly. Tension climbs with each breath. Degree by degree, the temperature in the studio rises until it feels like the air itself is vibrating. One co-host shifts nervously, her smile faltering. Another attempts to jump in with a cheerful comment, only to be swallowed whole by the crackling energy dominating the room. Joy doesn't turn. Luke doesn't turn away. That's their moment. Joy's voice sharpens again, slipping into the tone she uses when she's ready to corner a guest. She tilts her head, eyebrows lifting with challenge, and drops a question that hits the table like a small detonation. The audience goes silent, completely, breathtakingly silent. Not a cough, not a shuffle, not a whisper. just suspended stillness hanging in the air. Luke inhales once, slow and steady. His shoulders relax, but his gaze locks onto hers with unwavering focus. He leans forward, not aggressively, but with a quiet, undeniable power, making it clear he's not rattled, not intimidated. His response arrives wrapped in calm, but charged with unmistakable force. A verbal counterstrike delivered with perfect precision. Even the cameras seem to lean in, eager to capture every shifting detail of his expression. The co-hosts exchange glances, tight, anxious. They can't step in. They can only watch as the balance tilts. Joy pushes. Luke pushes back. Not with heat but with strength. A flicker betrays Joy, her smile slips for half a second. Her eyes dart toward the producers, like she's checking whether she crossed a line. But she turns back quickly, refusing to show weakness. The silence grows denser, every exchange weighted, every pause electric. And slowly, unmistakably, the power shifts. It moves across the table in a way everyone can feel. Luke's voice steadies further. His presence grows stronger. Joy's questions land with less bite, her confidence slipping grain by grain. The audience senses it. They're locked on Luke now, pulled in by the quiet fire behind his eyes. What began as a gentle interview has become a collision, and the storm has fully, unmistakably broken. But the turning point hasn't hit yet. Joy inhales sharply, leaning in with the confidence of someone preparing to deliver the final blow. The lights catch the daring glint in her eyes. She lets out the question that's been loaded, primed, and waiting beneath the entire interview. It drops like a match onto gasoline. The room freezes. Utterly. One camera zooms in on Luke's face. His eyes widen, not in fear, but in instant recognition of exactly what Joy is trying to do. The audience stares, breath held. Nobody moves. Luke stays still for a moment. His hands remain at rest. But his jaw clicks, quiet, decisive. The temperature in the room drops sharply, like a rush of cold air slicing through heat. He raises his head. Steady. Focused. Unblinking. The camera snaps to him. Joy smiles, she thinks she's taken control. Then Luke moves. He leans forward, slow, intentional, precise. The lighting reveals the steel in his eyes, the calm fire rising beneath the surface. He lets silence swell, lets it wrap around the room until the tension coils tight as a wire. And then? It is when he finally speaks that his voice is low, steady, impossibly calm. A direct contrast to the chaos storming through the studio. His words cut through the air with surgical accuracy, sharp enough to make the entire audience flinch. A quiet alertness settles over him, a poised readiness that hums beneath his calm exterior. When he responds, it's with an effortless precision, his voice low and steady, each word placed like it was meant to land exactly where it does. He doesn't dodge. He doesn't waver. He meets the question head-on, and the clarity of his answer makes the audience lean in without even realizing they've moved. For a fleeting second, Joy's expression softens, but then her eyes narrow, revealing the flicker of calculation hiding beneath her practiced smile. Luke's hand rests on his knee, fingers tapping so faintly it's almost invisible, a glimpse of the coil tightening inside him. Until the air changes so gradually that only the room appears to notice it at first. Joy leans forward, elbows inching closer to the table, her posture sharpening into something more focused, more deliberate. The chatter dies. Backstage noise fades into a distant hum. A stillness drapes over the set like a heavy curtain pulling itself closed. When Joy speaks again, her voice carries just a hint of cunning, a twist that nudges his previous answer toward a corner. Luke tilts his head, eyes narrowing with a restrained spark. He's not shaken. He's not annoyed. He's simply awake now, fully aware that this conversation has slipped into deeper waters. With slow, grounded confidence, he leans forward and delivers his next line with a clean, cutting precision that slices through the room. Laughter rises in a startled wave. Joy blinks, quick, sharp, then forces a smile that's tighter than before. Behind the cameras, a producer stiffens, another freezes mid-motion. Everyone feels it now, the tension crawling across the room like static searching out a place to strike. Joy lifts the next card. Luke's fingers curl against his knee. The silence stretches, thick and heavy, a breath held by every person present. And in that fragile pause, a realization moves through the studio like distant thunder. This isn't an interview anymore. This is the start of something no one expected. Joy wastes no time. As soon as the noise dies, she leans in with a spark in her eyes that makes the crew shift nervously. Her fingers press into the paper of her cue card, bending it slightly as she fires off another question, sharper, heavier, wrapped in a playful tone that disguises its blade edge. Her words land. The air tightens. And he feels the shift before he even answers. His spine straightens. His jaw firms. His smile cools into something steadier. The tension drops squarely between them like a weight placed on the table. Yet when he answers, he doesn't flinch. His voice remains smooth, collected, threaded with an iron steadiness that reveals the steel beneath. Every word lands with quiet force, controlled, respectful, but undeniably firm. Joy listens with that thin, unreadable smile, unwilling to back down. She circles the question again, pushing harder this time, and the energy in the room crackles dangerously. The audience sits motionless. The lights seem to grow warmer with every second. Luke lifts his chin, eyes narrowing in focus. He refuses to be cornered, and the seesaw of power begins. His next reply cuts cleaner, sharper, still polite, still measured, but unmistakably drawing a boundary. A soft gasp ripples through the audience, quickly swallowed. Everyone knows something invisible has snapped into place. Their exchange becomes a duel, silent, precise, each word a weapon. Joy fires another question. Luke's response is cool and slicing. The temperature on set climbs, the air vibrating with unspoken conflict. A co-host shifts nervously, her smile faltering. Another tries to lighten the moment, but the tension crushes her attempt instantly. The conversation belongs solely to them now. The room becomes the venue of a battle no one saw coming, and nobody dares interrupt. Joy's voice sharpens into her signature rhythm, the one she uses when she's closing in on a guest. She tilts her head, raising an eyebrow in challenge, and drops a question that lands like a small detonation on the table. The audience goes dead silent. Luke exhales once, a slow, controlled breath. He leans in, not with aggression, but with unwavering resolve. His reply is calm but charged, a verbal counterpunch delivered with absolute precision. Even the cameras seem to lean closer, hungry to capture every nuance. The co-hosts exchange worried glances. They can't interfere. They can only watch as the balance shifts unmistakably. Joy pushes. Luke pushes back, with grounded strength that begins to tilt the entire room in his favor. Joy feels the movement, her smile flickering for a split second. And then the silence thickens. Every word becomes a weapon, every breathing a signal. Power slides across the table, slow but unstoppable. Luke grows steadier, stronger, more centered. Joy's questions press harder but strike with less impact. The audience feels the pull, eyes drawn to Luke, drawn to the calm fire building behind his gaze. What began as a casual interview has become a collision course, and the storm is no longer building. It's here. And it is only seconds away from breaking wide open. The shift happens so quietly it almost goes unnoticed, until it hits all at once. Joy leans forward, eyes sharp, posture lifted like she's ready to deliver a final blow. The studio lights catch the spark of daring in her expression. She inhales and drops the question she's been holding back, a question wrapped in humor but lit underneath with a fuse wire of intent. It hits the air like a match falling into gasoline. The room freezes. Not a breath. Not a rustle. Cameras zoom in, capturing the moment. Luke's eyes widen, not in shock, but in pure recognition of her move. Another camera shows the audience, jaws slack, leaning forward as though pulled by gravity. Luke doesn't move. His hands stay loose on his lap, but his jaw clicks decisively. The temperature in the room drops like a door has opened to cold air. Slowly, steadily, he lifts his gaze. This is the moment everything flips. And everyone knows it. Joy smiles, convinced she has the upper hand. But the smile falters when Luke shifts, leaning forward, elbows resting lightly on his knees, the lighting reflecting the steel simmering in his eyes. He lets the silence stretch until it trembles. Then he speaks. His voice is low, steady, impossibly calm. The words cut through the room with surgical precision. Someone in the audience gasps. A camera operator flinches. Joy's smile collapses, her mask cracking for the first time. She opens her mouth but nothing comes out. Her hand curls around the table's edge, knuckles whitening. Luke's quiet strike has shattered the moment, and the entire room feels the quake. The hosts shift anxiously. One tries to interject but stops, realizing this moment is too massive to interrupt. The control room erupts into chaos, producers shouting, engineers scrambling, lights blinking like alarms. But on the main floor, everything remains frozen around Luke's calm, devastating composure. He leans back with a steadiness that radiates certainty. Everyone knows the balance has decisively, irrevocably shifted into his hands. Joy exhales shakily, staring down at her cards as though they might rescue her. They don't. Silence expands across the studio, thick and heavy. And then the room breaks. The audience erupts, cheers, gasps, stunned shouts. The hosts exchange frantic glances. Joy tries to recover but her words stumble, useless against the weight of what just happened. The view has seen storms, but nothing like this shockwave. And the impact doesn't stop at the studio walls. It explodes across the globe the instant the show cuts to commercial. Clips hit the internet within minutes, blurry, shaky phone videos uploaded by breathless audience members. On social media, chaos ignites. Timelines flood with reactions. Hashtags explode. Fans defend Luke fiercely. Others rally behind Joy. Comment sections turn into battlegrounds. Celebrities jump in with opinions before the West Coast broadcast even starts. Gossip sites pounce, headlines blazing, analysts dissecting every posture, every glance, every syllable. A single moment has become a cultural earthquake. Inside the studio, producers scramble into an emergency meeting, words like a damage control, statement, and crisis, ricocheting around the room. Luke steps into the hallway, phone buzzing non-stop, messages pouring in. Some cheer him. Some worry. Some criticize. But he scrolls with a calm, steady breath. He knows he spoke truth. And that certainty roots him. Joy retreats to her dressing room, shoulders tight, scrolling through a tidal wave of mixed reactions, support, backlash, confusion, fury. She presses her fingers to her temples, trying to ground herself as the noise grows louder. Crew members whisper in the hallway, some stunned, some terrified, all aware that something historic just happened. And above all the chaos, one truth rings through every studio corridor and every corner of the internet. The confrontation didn't stop when the cameras stopped. It only began. The moment had taken on a life of its own, growing exponentially with each passing minute, shaping narratives, splitting opinions, and pulling millions into its orbit. The studio was no longer just a studio, it had become the epicenter of an earthquake, still sending tremors far beyond its walls. When the cameras finally went dark and the immediate chaos began to fade, the unspoken truths started creeping through the cracks, subtle but undeniable. Behind closed doors, away from the glare of lights and the roar of social media, the deeper motivations of both sides began to surface like shadows stretching across the floor. Luke sat quietly in a small waiting room, the faint buzz of his phone muffled against the cushion beside him. He wasn't angry, and he wasn't rattled. Instead, he replayed every line, every inflection, every second of the exchange with the calm clarity of someone who understood precisely why he had responded the way he did. He had entered that studio ready to be challenged, ready to defend himself. But he hadn't anticipated the full weight of the moment Joy had engineered. Somewhere deep inside, though, he knew that line had been waiting for him all along. Joy, in her own space, faced a different truth. The question that had sparked everything hadn't been spontaneous. It hadn't been a slip. It was deliberate, a decision she had debated, hesitated over, and ultimately committed to because she felt compelled to push, to provoke, to uncover something real. She hadn't predicted the magnitude of the explosion she would ignite, but she knew she was lighting a fuse she could no longer control. Down the hallway, whispers spread among the crew. One stagehand recounted feeling the air shift seconds before the climactic line landed. A camera operator swore he caught a subtle signal in Luke's eyes, a tiny shift only perceptible to those paying the closest attention. A producer muttered that they had always feared a moment like this might erupt someday, just not today, not with these two. Gradually, small details trickled out. Joy had scrapped 3 earlier questions, Luke had paced more than usual backstage, and the control room had prepared 2 backup segments just in case, a decision that now felt eerily prophetic. In the calm after the storm, one truth became undeniable: this confrontation hadn't sprung from a single question. It was years of tension, accumulated perspective, and mounting expectation, converging in a single, explosive second. Everyone who witnessed it could sense there was far more beneath the surface than the cameras, or the world, had ever seen. In the days that followed, the incident settled into Hollywood lore, retold and replayed with a reverence normally reserved for iconic movie scenes. Commentators framed it as a turning point. Fans labeled it unforgettable. Insiders whispered that it marked the start of a shift, one in which raw, unscripted truth could pierce through the polished veneer of daytime television like never before. The significance wasn't confined to the clash itself, it lay in what it revealed: Luke's calm, unwavering fire, Joy's relentless push, the collision of 2 perspectives held with enough conviction to let the world watch them collide. It was a reminder that, even in the glossy, controlled world of television, real emotion still has the power to break through. Weeks later, people still spoke of the silence just before Luke delivered the line that would define the moment. The collective gasp of the audience, the split-second crack in Joy's mask, the tiny flickers of expression captured by the camera like history in motion. The story was retold endlessly, on late-night shows, on podcasts, across fan forums, and behind the closed doors of industry meetings. Everyone had a perspective. Everyone had a memory burned into them from that day. Hollywood has always had its dramatic confrontations, but this one hit differently. It carried the weight of authenticity, the rawness of two people refusing to yield, and the electric charge of stakes that felt deeply personal. And long after the immediate noise faded, long after new controversies tried to push their way to the top of the headlines, the moment remained. Quiet, unshakable, unmistakable. A moment that slipped through the cracks of entertainment and became unforgettable. A moment that would be remembered, replayed, and talked about for years to come, a reminder that reality, even for a few seconds, could still explode in the most unexpected, powerful way.